Okay. Yep.
For thousands of years, elders and knowledge keepers have used stories to educate future generations. Stories and words can help heal our hearts and make Mother Earth a better place for all people. This is Healing Hearts.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Healing Hearts. I'm Tracy Koga. Well, part of being a parent is experiencing that wonderful feeling of watching your child play sports. You cheer on that big win, and you comfort when they lose. But what if your child received racial slurs? Well, tonight we're going to have a heartfelt discussion just about that. Learn more about the Anti-Racism in Sport campaign and how it is bringing hope to Indigenous and newcomer communities. Healing Hearts starts right after this.
So the Hive is a climbing and fitness facility, so we're bouldering only, which means no ropes or harnesses. We use mats for protection. But the four pillars of our business are climbing, education, health and wellness, and community, and those aspects all kind of come together to create like a 5-star climbing experience.
Welcome back to Healing Hearts. A special thank you to the Hive. And now let's open it up to our gallery. We have a full house tonight. I want to welcome Gololcha, Gode, Keegan, Roger, and Donald here. Welcome to Healing Hearts, everyone. And the conversation, I think, is going to be, like I said, very heartfelt, but true and sometimes hard. So anyways, I'm going to go to Roger and his son Keegan to share your story, to start everything off, and to, I guess, set the tone for our conversation tonight. So Keegan, maybe I'll let you take the reins right now.
Okay. Sorry, I'm a little shy. My name is Keegan Gawish, and I faced racism in a hockey game, or during hockey. And it mentally made me want to quit hockey. And I didn't feel too bright as a person during the time. And that's basically it. It impacted not just me, but like my relatives, my teammates. Impacted everyone who's close to me.
Oh. Keegan, what team did you play for, and what particular game did this incident happen?
I played for the Minnedosa Chancellors. It's a high school hockey team, and it happened October 31st in Swan Valley, I'm pretty sure. And yeah.
And was it just one incident, Keegan?
It was kind of like all over the game, but the big part was like at the end when the rest of my team heard it. I was just slacking it off because I don't know, I just didn't let it bug me. But then at the end of the game, when my teammates heard it, they went off, and then we let my coaches know what happened, and then they had to talk with the other team's managers and stuff like that.
That must have been kind of scary, though, to see how things could escalate so quickly.
Yeah, like I wasn't too bothered. Like, I was upset that happened, but I just didn't really let it bother me at first. But then after a while, I just realized like I just faced racism, and like it's 2020, it was 2021, and racism's still going on. Like, it's not a small deal anymore. It's really big, and seeing how much it still goes around is like heartbreaking. And then the fact that teenagers and kids go through that is so heartbreaking.
No, it is. And I'm sure you're well aware, too, of what's happening, in the NHL. PK Subban speaking out for his brother who faced an incident on the ice. And I mean, it just happened so recently. And then when we're going to be having this conversation, it was just like, oh my God, this is a systemic problem, like everywhere. And like Roger, now as a parent, you were not at that game, is that correct?
No, I wasn't there. The team manager contacted me and informed me of what happened. shortly after they finished playing. So yeah, we didn't hear it from our son right away. We heard it from a member of the team. So
Yeah. So once you heard this, obviously what was going through your mind, but more importantly, how did you handle it in conversation with Keegan?
oh well, like I had a like he's never approached us like that before. Like, he's never said like, I want to stop playing. So we knew right away that something was definitely wrong, right? So something really, really big happened to him, like something that's affected his will to play with something he's loved doing his whole life. So I kind of had to just compose myself, and when he got home, we sat him down and just basically, there's going to be some people like that in this world, and we just kind of urged him to not quit, and like after a talk, and then we kind of just composed ourselves after a while. And then he kind of got that will to play again, and a couple of days later he want to quit, so that was good.
Oh my goodness. And now, what is it like for you as a parent? Are you always a little on edge on that it may happen again?
Oh, definitely. No, like there was an instance before, the situation before when he was smaller. It happened back then. I think he was maybe 9 or 10. So it was maybe 6 years ago. And I have another another son that plays hockey, and he's 8 years old. So it's always running through your mind now, right? So you never want to deal with stuff like that as a parent. You never want to see your child come off the ice saying he wants to quit. It's not a really good feeling. I wouldn't wish that harm on anybody. And these are just kids, they're not,
No.
they don't prepare themselves for stuff like this.
No, most definitely. Keegan, now what is it like? You're still playing hockey?
Yes, I am.
And how are your teammates? How are you now? Is the game any different?
No, not really. It just, I don't know, it affected the whole team for a little while, and then like until everything just kind of got figured out about what was going to happen. And once they heard what was happening in that arena, about what's going on, about like the fans and stuff like that, they were pretty all right after that. They were mad at first that it happened, but yeah, they cooled down.
Oh, well, that's good to hear. And for you, Keegan, how have you changed? I mean, you've come out to tell this story. You're telling it here to everyone that's watching out there, anywhere. You've been on the news. Has this made it easier now for you to speak out if incidents like this happen to either you again or someone that you know?
Yeah, personally, like I think that the way this has happened is like making it easier for people who have faced racism in sports, to like racism at all, just to speak up and let other people know, and then like situate the problem, see what happened, and like it's wrong racism and stuff like that. Like people, the fact that they go around still saying stuff like that is like just showing like how the world is. Like it's a tough world, and that people are always going to try to discourage you and stuff like that.
Wow. Well, you're a very brave young man, and I think this will be a nice segue to Gololcha to talk about this anti-racism in sport campaign. Tell us more, definitely about the campaign, but there were, I guess, a study done and results done, and fill us in more on what the study showed.
For sure, thank you. Thank you, Keegan and Roger, for sharing your experiences. And while unfortunate, I think the idea behind the campaign, the anti-racism in sport campaign, originated racialized First Nation, Métis Nation, Inuit Black, racialized, and religious minority community members. So, our research was focused in Winnipeg, but it's abundantly clear for everyone to see that racism is, in sport at least, is prevalent as well across Manitoba. About the campaign, our goal is we're seeking to increase and promote and engage in discussion on anti-racism in sports and the presence of racism at all levels in Winnipeg and its impact on people's lives, and to raise awareness and address and find ways to eliminate racism and discrimination that's, experienced by First Nation, Métis Nation, Inuit, Black, racialized, religious minorities here in Winnipeg. The campaign is multifaceted. We have, Tracy, as you mentioned, the research component, and I'll speak about that, but we also have a training component that we are now offering to provincial sport organizations, community clubs, board members of these sport administrators, match officials, and it's a three-hour module that is basically an introduction into anti-racism literacy and what that means and what they can do as to be anti-racist in sport. We have a public awareness campaign that we launched a video that Godi was one of the stars in that video there, and we have school presentations that provided to middle school students where we developed it in collaboration with the Manitoba Association for Rights and Liberties, and we have one pro athlete and one community sport leader that go and talk about the types of racism, how they're experienced in sport, and form anti-racism actions and promotions of inclusion in sport for the young people. But in specific to the research findings that we had, working in close collaborations with the University of Manitoba, what we found was there is racism within the sports system in Winnipeg. And within that, there is a culture of rejecting and ignoring racist incidents when they report it. People are refusing to acknowledge the problem. And when it's discussed, policies that are supposedly to reject racism are not being brought to the forefront to address them. In continuing that, there's the impact of racism is multiplied for those that experienced exactly what Keegan has felt, this desire of not wanting to feel to continue to play sport is something that the research has also found. There's a failure to recruit, and that means there's also a shortage of potential coaches and referees who are not from white settler Canadian background. So the sport ecosystem is very narrow in what it looks like, and it doesn't create a very welcome and inclusive environment for that. So one of the key recommendations that we had within the research was there was a need of education and training focused on anti-racism literacy. Many people don't know what an anti-racist is. They don't know what unconscious bias is. They don't know what is white privilege, what is whiteness, and how does that impact sport in Winnipeg. So that's one of the findings that we kind of morphed into the training and to work with sport leaders and sport individuals within the ecosystem. In addition to that, there's a need to increase anti-racism awareness. So individuals like Keegan and Roger to show their bravery and to step out and talk about their experiences and what are the next steps that are going to happen in terms of addressing that. So where there's a need for that. And finally, there's a need to take action in addressing the structural inequities, I should say, when it comes to racism in sport in Winnipeg. Why is hockey have a culture like that? Why is soccer have a culture like that? Why is there a culture of dominance in volleyball? We have to look at this and think of what are the systems in place in recruiting, in making it accessible. Why is there no community centers playing sports across the north end of Winnipeg? We have to look at the structural issues, and that comes in with the intersectionality of income, religion, race, women in sport, all of that is included into that. So those were some of the findings we found, and yet they were restricted to Winnipeg. The scope of it was individuals who was in sport for the last 40 years to the last 2 or 3 years. So this is something that is not brand new. It's something that has been here for a while, and this campaign, and as well as the bravery of a lot of young people and people across Winnipeg and Manitoba stepping out and telling their stories. Hopefully we can really make sport in Winnipeg a safe space for a lot of people.
Well, and it's too bad because sport is something that is so universal, and it teaches kids how to play on a team, or, everybody should have the experience of the thrill of winning and the loss of defeat or whatever, but definitely not having to face racism at all. And speaking of sport, we have Don Burrell, and if that name rings a bell, well, it could be because you remember him playing for the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, and a very good player, to be very, very truthful. And we're so happy, Don, that you are here still in Winnipeg, and also going to be involved in this campaign as a school presenter. So share with us a little bit about, I guess, your experience in sport. You faced racism, and then why this campaign really rings true to your heart. You're muted, Don. The beauty of
All right. Thank you, Tracy. I got involved with this campaign to utilize my platform as a former professional football player to encourage young people like Keegan to speak up when I didn't speak up, when I had a chance to. I was a member of the Winnipeg Blue Bomber coaching staff in '09, and I had a staff member to utilize the N-word referring back to me, and I didn't speak up about it. I stayed quiet about it. And when the opportunity came for me to be a part of something I think is very crucial in this community, and to deal with racism and to have had that experience, I wanted to give back to the community and share my like of stepping up and encourage other young people like Keegan, whether it's hockey or whether it's football, when you are in those situations and when people are, and like he knew that this is wrong. And I knew it was wrong when my coworker used the N-word referring to me, but I didn't speak up about it, and I kept quiet about it. And I think that something has been kind of kneeling at me for a long time. And when this campaign came across for me to have an opportunity to give back, I jumped at the opportunity. Also, I wanted to share my experience as being the only African-American high school coach in Winnipeg high school football who had an undefeated season. My team averaged 50 points a ball game, and I wasn't voted coach of the year at the end of the year. And to me, I look at that situation and I'm saying to myself, is it racism? Is it cronyism? I'm not one of the cronies. I'm an African-American. I'm Black. I was the only they're all school teachers, and I was the only non-school teacher. So what avenue did they use to keep from naming me coach of the year, and the emotional scars that did to my players? Because I don't play anymore, I coach. And for my players not to get that recognition is one of the things that I think we have to look at high school football and saying, are they not voting for me as coach of the year because of the color of my skin? Or are they not voting for me for the coach of the year because I'm not a school teacher? I just think we need to look at, I think it's racism. I think it was discrimination, however you want to, whichever avenue you want to look at it, it was discriminating against me. And I think for Winnipeg football, high school football, to live up to its mandate, which is to give every one of those football young athletes the greatest football experience there is. And when you have an undefeated season and you average 50 points a ball game, you should have the recognition for that. And I didn't get it, and my players didn't get it. So when this opportunity came for me to speak out about racism in sports in Winnipeg, I jumped at the opportunity because I think I have a lot to give back to it.
And quickly, Don, do you think it's lack of education or a lack of understanding? And you know what? Feel free, anybody else here on the panel, to jump in. I'm curious, like, you know, for your coworker to say the N-word?
Yeah, well, we can say a lack of education, but I just think it's ingrained in us as young people, and it's ingrained. It started what mom and dad does at home, and I mean, this is a coworker of mine, and we're talking grown people in their 30s and 40s, and they're still using the N-word, referring to me as one of their coworkers. I overheard it, and I didn't do what I wanted to do. What I wanted to do was go to my good friend Joe Pascucci and tell him about it and talk about it. But because you're in the middle of a football season and you don't want to be that one distraction to cause us to take the focus away from the football team itself and start dealing with a racial issue, that was a whole another can of worms. But at the end of the day, I didn't handle it the right way. I didn't speak up. I didn't say anything about it. And this young man coming on here today and talking about his experience is exactly why I'm involved in it, because I didn't speak up, but it's time for us not to be silent. It's time for us to speak up and bring attention to racism in sports in this community. And here's the thing that hurted me the most about it, and it hurted me emotionally. I grew up in Birmingham, Alabama, and one of the reasons why I chose to live in Canada was that I thought I would never have to hear that word again. That was the biggest reason why I stayed here, because I thought I would never have to be subjected to hearing that word again, and I did, and it hurt. It still hurts, and that's how many years ago. So I'm not sure how to, whether it's education or just lack of empathy for others. I have no idea. Maybe someone else can answer that, but I just know that it's a hurtful. The whole act is hurtful, and it needs to be addressed.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, thank you.
Thank you, Don, for sharing. I'd like to jump in and
Yeah.
just say that, you know, I think, I don't want to speak for Godi, but I for myself as a player and a current coach, it's something that it's prevalent throughout to this day. And I think one of the things that I find and that I hear is a lot of the time that people think that, I didn't mean it like that. The intention wasn't there. And I think that excuse is kind of a cop-out. I think that one of the things that Canadians especially need to rectify and reckon with is that this country is very racist. And there is a lot of racial discrimination towards certain groups, and for some reason, maybe it's media washing or you know, idea of Canada being superior when it comes to race relations than America. But there is this mindset that we as Canadians don't do that. But if you, and like our research shows, and the experiences of Don and Keegan and the fears that Roger has as a parent when it comes to his young boys playing sports, this is something that is across the country. And a lot of white Canadians they can't even fathom that. And if we were to have that conversation, a lot of them would use that. The intention is not that. He's just a kid. He doesn't know what he's saying. But these words have consequences, and they have impacts on people, and they can be very, very detrimental. I mean, one of the things that for a lot of people from First Nation, Métis Nation, Inuit, Black, racialized or religious communities, sport plays so much more than the idea of just playing physical, getting physical exercise or being physically literate. Like for a lot of these communities, it's the only way that they can have some access to social mobility, create a better social network for themselves, go on and use sport as a mechanism to maybe have a better life, to get a better education. And the idea of racism in sport, the impact of it not wanting us to continue in this, it derives and it avoids people's opportunity at life as well. So I think some people don't look at it as a big thing, but it's a huge thing, and people really have to understand and have that conversation that it's not something that's just on the field. These things have impacts that last a long time. And I'm sure listening to Don and Keegan, like the story that Don shared, like that, the reason why he came to Canada was not to hear that word. And for him to hear that and to experience things like the coaching thing is something that he didn't expect to hear in Canada, but it is here. And I think for a lot of people listening today, they should take that home with them, that racism in sport is here. Racism in general is here in Canada, in Winnipeg. It's alive. It's everywhere. It's embedded into all the social institutions, every kind of institution, and it's something that we as a nation, as a city, as a province, really have to reckon with. And if we really want to say that we are, this model for the rest of the world, then we have to change, and we have to really look at a lot of the systems that we have in place and dismantle them, and then build them into a way that is much more inclusive and equitable for all.
Oh, wow. Well, thank you, Gololcha, for sharing. And I think everybody shares in your sentiments. And we've got a lot of work to do. But I think this is the start, right? It is talking and sharing. So, Godi, you've been listening to all of this. I'm curious, though, first, like for you, share with us what you've built. You founded and are the executive director of the Manitoban African Cup. What has this brought to your community?
Yeah. So for the whole purpose of the Manitoba African Cup of Nations, the whole purpose was seeing on how we can bring our African communities together. And like Gololcha has mentioned, sports is more than just a game to majority of our communities. It's a way that we socialize. So that was the whole purpose. But then we started digging down deep. We realized that there's a lot of work that needs to be done in the community. So I started another initiative which was called a free-to-play program, which I realized that saying that accessibility to sports was not just a barrier for the newcomers, but for everybody that's living in low income. So we started this initiative was pretty much was to provide a free soccer academy for inner city kids. For all backgrounds, all race, all nationality, because we understood that it's a problem or it's a barrier that is facing a lot of youth in inner city areas. So that's the reason why we started the Manitoba African Cup of Nations and also the free-to-play program.
Wow. Now, for you, have you faced racism?
Yes, I have faced racism all levels here in Manitoba, as a recreation player, as a coach at university level. So I have played here soccer pretty much at all level, right? I played from recreation to premier to provincial to college to university, but also now I'm a coach, but also I'm a community organizer of sport. And I see racism show its face or display in many different areas. I remember as a player, I did face racism when I was, I think, this is about 6-7 years ago. I was playing, and I did face racism as a player, but also when I started coaching. As soon as I started coaching, because I was coaching a newcomers sport, newcomers youth. When my kids will go and compete with other clubs who are coming from inner city, and of course you're competing against everybody else. The referees and the way other parents that were talking about our kids, oh, probably that's not their age, they're too big, they shouldn't be doing this, they shouldn't be doing that. I then always had harsh comments. And also the way the referees will handle certain situations, they were always harsher on our kids, and we couldn't understand that. So I would say racism does exist here in Manitoba. I've seen it, I've experienced it firsthand as a player, as a coach, but also we are seeing it as as a community leader, trying to facilitate, trying to see on how we can bring, we can create accessibility for sports for all kids, because I think a financial barrier, it's a big system that is there that sometimes we don't talk about. Yes, there's wonderful initiatives and programs like Kids Sport. For example, Kids Sport is a wonderful program. I was a beneficiary from that program, but you look at the application form, if you were to say, this is a kid, you say, okay, is finance the biggest barrier, but take this application form. A lot of the newcomers' families cannot be able to complete the form. So that alone becomes a barrier. And we have been talking about this for many, many years, but the system doesn't change. And I don't think so they recognize that it's actually a barrier that is there.
Wow. We're learning so much. What we think is like so simple, right? Godi, like filling out an application form. It isn't. And you're right. You're totally right. Well, once I get Keegan back on the screen, I'm going to swing it back to you, Keegan, and Roger, too, now. I was interested. Godi mentioned it. Don sort of touched on it. So correct me if I'm wrong, though. Keegan, you play like out of town, right? You said Minnedosa Chancellors?
Yeah.
So you play,
Yeah.
do you play just within the small towns in your area? Or do you ever play against city teams?
Like Western Manitoba, like Brandon
Okay, Brandon.
area, like Wawanesa, I believe, and then so I think we go up to Carberry, Swan Valley, just around this region basically,
Right.
like Russell.
Well, Brandon,
Yeah.
okay, would probably be the biggest, I guess, city, so to speak. Do you notice a difference where you go to play, and especially now since your experience, or do you find that it's always the same thing? Like when you go into that rink, you're gonna get.
No, it's honestly different. Like I have friends on like different teams, and then
Yeah.
like, I don't know. I kind of just went around the league, and they're asking if I was like okay and stuff like that. Just
Oh, that's
checking in
good.
on me, seeing if I was fine. Yeah, and I was, and just seeing how much people were there supporting me
Oh,
made me
that's
feel a lot
awesome.
better than I did before. And yeah,
Well, and I think, and correct me maybe too if I'm wrong, Roger, having your son speak out, I think really resonated with his peers, with youth, right? And it's really maybe it's the parents that might need a little bit
it
of.
did it. Yeah, no, definitely. Like he had a overwhelming amount of support from everyone, like just from different. We got messages from all over the province from parents who had kids in hockey, and we got messages from Swan River saying, "Oh, like I'm not surprised, but we send our thoughts out to your son and everything." Like just the overwhelming support. I think it just really picked us all up as a family to get through what we had to go through, and so like it's not a really good feeling, but it is good to know that people have your support when stuff like this does happen. So, and Keegan does have his own little has its own, like in their hockey world, they have their friends. They all gather together when stuff like this happens, so that's good too.
Oh, and has there been any kind of recommendations or anything, I guess, positive in the hockey league coming out of this situation?
Well, I would. I haven't heard anything back from Swan River, but like the impact of Keegan's story went a long ways. It wasn't just around Manitoba; it was nationally as well. Like he got a letter from University of Calgary a few weeks after it happened. They were just showing their support for him as well. So I think just the story alone of how much it impacted people in the hockey world was a really good thing. It created some awareness, and I think that's the big thing too when you're dealing with racism situations, right? Is to create awareness. The more awareness you have is the best chance of it happens to another child, such as our son or someone younger than him. You never want to see it happen at all.
No, most definitely. So, Gololcha, there is going to be a conference, I believe, on February 5th in conjunction with the Anti-Racism in Sport campaign. Can you fill us in? And is there going to be workshops too for parents as well?
Sure. So part of the Anti-Racism in Sport campaign is we have a Anti-Racism in Sport campaign diversity and inclusion sport conference. We just had our first half of the day, which was on this past Saturday on January 22nd. And we have the second half on February 5th from 9 to 12:30. And the conference examines the perspectives and experiences and barriers that historically excluded groups experience in sport, as well as some organizations that can make sport more inclusive. For this upcoming February 5th day, we have 3 presenters. One of them is from the Access and Inclusion for Indigenous Peoples to Sport, and we have Isabel Obe, who will be presenting there. And then we also have from the Canadian Women in Sport, Natasha Cyril. And from the Anti-Racism in Sport campaign, I myself will be kind of doing a 50-minute summary of the training that we've developed. It's a training module that looks at, 1, what is our campaign? What are we trying to do? Number 2, goes into an introductory of anti-racism literacy education. So we'll go over terms like what is racism, what is race, what is microaggressions, what is whiteness, and looking at these terms and then relaying them back into sport and how they manifest into sport. And then the final section of the training module is what can people do within your current role within sport to be an ally and to be an anti-racist. And we also look at, obviously, what does that mean to be an anti-racist? So, this module is we are on our website, antiracisminsport.ca. We have a link for trainings, and we encourage individuals from different organizations. If you have parents from one team or a couple leagues want to come together and register for a training, it's all available there. There's dates and times. We're flexible, and we have a team of presenters who will be able to reach out virtually. And if the pandemic eases up, hopefully we can meet face to face and do that training for you guys.
Oh, and that is, you've hit it right on the nose. Face to face, not only for the participants, but for fans. I mean, we all know we're starving for live sport. Cody and Don, and I'll ask Keegan too. And Keegan, when he told his story, he said, but then I got really angry. Anger is like a real trigger, a trigger point to either go one way or the other way. So, gentlemen, what makes you so angry about racism, and then can you maybe relate to a time and a place where you got so angry that you couldn't control yourself, or maybe you caught yourself? Donald.
For me, I think what makes me angry is that we're in 2022 and we're still having to deal with it. Like I stated, growing up in Birmingham, Alabama, it was something I faced day to day. My parents faced day to day. And coming to Canada was my escape from racism. In my mind, was my escape from racism. Of everything that I learned about Canada once I got up here, and everyone's saying it doesn't exist. And I'm angry because today it does exist in Manitoba. And yes, in 2009, when my coworker used the N-word with me and I overheard it, it did make me angry. But I was able to compartmentalize the fact that I have to be professional. And I had players, Jovan Johnson, that whole crew of players that I was coaching that depended on me to be there. I could have blew the building up. I could have went to Joe Pascucci and just blew the whole building up. But I compartmentalized it and I said, it's bigger than me. If I let my anger take control and I blow the building up, compartmentalize, but I kept quiet, and I'm angry at myself, and I'm angry at the world that we still live in that's a racist world. And I think at some point, the Keegans of the world that continuously speak up about their experiences, maybe once enough young people start speaking up about it and the numbers become so overwhelming that people are speaking up about it, those that have those racist views would have to stop and look at themselves in the mirror, because you're affecting young people. It's the young people who's our future that don't need to have the Keegan experience. So as far as what makes me angry is that we're still here today.
Yes, indeed. Godi, your thoughts?
Yeah, for me, what makes me angry is I look back before I started this whole thing was the experience that my nephew was experiencing and was living with his grandmother. And the situation was during that time, there was one season that he could not have paid for his soccer club, and they told him, unfortunately, you cannot be a part of a team. And when I look back on that, and the kid was already dealing with other issues at school, and sport was the only thing that he felt he could belong. But because of lack of, just because of lack of funding or financial resources, this young man, they told him, and I even spoke to the president of the club, I'm like, is there anything that could be done so that this young boy can still play, can stay with the club? Because this was, he already made friends with his soccer mates. And the president of the club told me, unfortunately not. We have costs to cover. So from that day, I think it was 2019, I said, I must do something about this. Because he was not the only kid. And I knew it, there were several of them. And I became really angry to the president of the club. Mm-hmm. It was a club that I played for when I was young. I coached there, I volunteered there, I served there, but when it came to say, is there something that could be done so that this young man can stay, stay off the street and still be a part of a club? The president told me no, because of affordability and things like that. So from that day, I decided to do something about it. And that's where the free-to-play came. Through my anger and my frustration, I promised this to myself. I say, sport should be a right for every child. Every child should have a right to play at least sport until they are 18. We live in Canada, what we call the great country. But if kids cannot even access sports, it should be a right for every child. So that has become a part of my mission in the community, that I want to ensure or make sure that every child, despite of what they may go to have to feel that financial barrier should not be an issue that stops kids from participating from sports. So I have taken on the initiative. I got my coaching license. I've done everything I can. So we run academy that kids like my nephew who cannot afford it or who feel like they don't have a place to belong, they can belong. So that's kind of where I guess I use my anger in the right way to do something about it. But that's kind of one thing that really frustrates me. And it's just the beginning of work. And there's a lot of work that needs to be done in the inner city, just not only in the inner city, but in a whole Manitoba or Canada wide. Accessibility to sport, it's a very serious problem.
Oh, well, hopefully we can start it right here in Manitoba. Keegan, so I'm going to ask you now, I mean, you know, you get angry or whatever. Do you ever get frustrated?
Yeah, I got frustrated when I heard that because, like, to me, the ice is like my getaway from all the personal problems I've ever had and stuff like that. Like, it's just my getaway, and thought could be free and like do whatever. And then after figuring out that I faced racism, I was angry, yeah, but I took deep breaths, kept myself as calm as possible, trying to like figure out the whole situation. And then I was mad, but I kept myself contained the best as I could. I didn't bother saying anything because I knew if I did say something towards them, there could have been consequences, not just to me, but like to the team. Like, it could have made my team look bad and stuff like that.
Wow. So now you've heard Don's story and Godi too, and how they've kind of turned their anger into good. We won't call it anger, but now does this kind of make you think a little bit more on how you can make a difference? Because I think opportunities like what Gololcha is offering with the anti-racism and sport campaign, I think you'd be a perfect fit. So yeah, I'm just giving a pitch for Keegan here.
Yeah, like what I think is like that people shouldn't be scared to like talk about the consequences, what they've like personally been through with racism. Like, they shouldn't be scared at all to talk up. Yeah, it's scary that you've been through it, but try your best to talk up, get comfortable, and let people know that there is racism still going all around the world, not just like Manitoba or anything like that, like all over the place. Like, it's not a small thing, it's like a really big thing in the world.
Wow. Roger, you must be quite proud of your son.
Very, very, very proud of him. Yeah, no, he's one of the bravest boys that's ever. Yeah, just the amount of courage he has to talk about stuff like this. It's very proud. Like, you have a wide range of emotions going through your head, right? You know, at the same time, you don't want your kids to go through this, but at the same time, the way he handled it, it was one of the proudest moments I've had as a father.
Well, and it does say a lot, though, too, for you as a parent. And
Thank you.
And I think everybody, this question is out there for everybody. Don, we had a little chit chat a little bit about, and I know how you're going to answer this. How important is the home life, your upbringing, to how it's going to shape you as a person?
What mom and dad does at home is, I think, is the key to any form of getting rid of racism. It's mom and dad, and we all know that I want to be like my dad. I want to be like my mom. I want to work hard like my mom. So everything that they do in their home trickles to school. It trickles to the team that they're on. It trickles to the community. So to me, everything starts with mom and dad.
Godi, you're nodding your head.
Yes, I strongly agree because when I look back and the first time I encountered racism again, we were just 14 years old, and there was no way that say these things these as little as we were just 14 years old, they it had to start from home, and we saw it at soccer games and what parents how they were reacting towards our players. It's very important that it starts from home, right? I think the upbringing, it does says a lot about, how they treat other people.
Yeah. And Gololcha, how do you feel? What do you think?
Yeah, I think it's, I think like everyone said, it's tough, and I commend a lot of the champions and the leaders, like people like Keegan and Godi and Don, for talking about their experiences and really making themselves vulnerable and to share what they've gone through. I think it's an unfortunate reality that they have to experience something and for people to realize what's going on. But I also think that it's something that also doesn't come out of nowhere. These are things that as young children and young people see and hear at home, at social gatherings, at wherever it may be, and it becomes something normal to them. So we need to call it out and call it what it is.
So what would be the first thing that you would like to see changed if you had the power to do it? Keegan.
For me, it's just like the people think about the stuff they're gonna say. Like, just take a second thought. Like, is this hurtful? Could this make a big impact on the person I say this to? Like, are they gonna like it or anything? It's gonna mess them up mentally, physically. Like, how is it gonna affect them? It's not gonna it won't affect the person saying it, but it's gonna affect who they're saying it to. And
Right.
I don't know. People just gotta think about what they're gonna say and stuff like that. Take second thoughts.
No, that's for sure. Don, what would you like to see if you had your choice?
I would like, in a perfect world, to see more non-profit organizations addressing parents, addressing the education that the parents see their kids having. How much of a community we can build if we had more nonprofit organizations focusing on the parents, educating the parents on what their behavior, their words, their hurtful words is doing to their kids. And to me, there's just not enough organizations out there that are addressing the parents and what their lack of empathy is when they're talking in front of their kids and knowing. My mom used to tell me all the time, don't go out of this house and embarrass me. So whatever you're going out there and saying is reflecting back on her. So I don't think there's enough emphasis put on that with parents.
Oh, I've heard that a few times. And Godi, how about for you?
For me, I would say it's pretty much awareness. Like I keep emphasizing on just awareness. A lot of people think that racism doesn't exist, or they don't even know. Sometimes they say, oh, I didn't know that's racism. Like, for example, making certain comments, oh, you are Black. So these stereotypes. So just realizing that racism is real in Manitoba, in Canada, here in Winnipeg, I think it's a first step of us moving forward, because without us realizing that or acknowledging that, then it's tough. It's always going to be pushed. It doesn't exist. No, that didn't happen. So awareness, and that's why I'm so grateful for the whole anti-racism in sport campaign and the school presentations, just creating awareness, ringing that bell, say, wake up, it's real, it's here, right? That's what I would say.
Well, thank you. You're right, it's here. So Roger, moving forward, what would you like to see happen?
I'd have to agree with Gody as well. It's a big thing when me and Keegan talk about this situation that happened to him is creating awareness so that it doesn't happen to other children as well, you know. And I'm pretty grateful that the anti-racism and sport organization reached out to us and to help their campaign. And you know, that I think it's a wonderful thing what they're doing. I really do. And going to schools is a big step in creating awareness. So I really admire that. Another thing that I had a big concern about is other parents witnessing this type of behavior to take that step forward and, you know, helping the person that's experiencing this racism behavior, you know, just acknowledge that person, to help the situation, to make it better, you know, like it only takes one person to make an impact for racism to stop when it's happening out there, right? So even if it's just one or two parents coming forward and saying, hey, you know, that's not right, we need to stop that, and then, you know, just explaining their actions of how impactful it is on a person. So
No doubt. And, you know, unfortunately, sport tends to get the best of us sometimes in the heat of the moment. And like Keegan said, we have to think about what we're going to say or before those words come out of our mouths, most definitely. Gololcha, I'll let you wrap things up again. More information on this conference on February 5th. And the question to you now, how or are we going to see more from this campaign? I think now we've kind of opened the doors. We need some more eye-openers, like Keegan, like Don, like Gode too, right? To kind of, you know, clear the smoke. Let's see with clear eyes what's happening out there.
For sure. Like I said earlier, on next Saturday, February 5th, we have our second day of the Access and Inclusion to Sport virtual conference. 3 speakers, Isabel Obe from Access and Inclusion for Indigenous Peoples to Sport, Natasha Cyril from the Canadian Women in Sport, and myself doing a brief descriptor of the training module that was designed by the Anti-Racism in Sport campaign. In terms of next steps, I think we are in the midst of rolling out this training, and we really are eager to get as many sports stakeholders involved in the training. One of the things our research taught us is not many people know like anti-racism literacy education. So they don't know what racism means. As Gody said, they don't know what their microaggressions and their impacts have. They don't know about their biases and how that can formulate and manifest into racial thoughts and racial prejudice. So we would like to get out there and really promote this training and get it out. A couple of other things that we are also developing is we are developing a couple of tools that will be used for Anti-Racism in Sport Accord. And this is a way for organizations to kind of sign on and commit to making a commitment to being anti-racism in sport organizations. Within that, we have a couple tools that we'll be developing for them. For example, one of them would be an anti-racism policy and procedures that we hope that organizations could adopt and amend to fit into their organizations. And that basically creates a mechanism for, if implemented correctly, for people to be able to report and have clear procedure processes on what happens when people, like say things that what happened to Keegan, or if someone with the experience that Don had of another coach calling him that, there would be a system where the people in those organizations would know about, they could come forward and let people know. And so that's one of the things. The other two is just to do equity audits. So this basically administers in the organization. It kind of tells what is the breakdown of leadership, staff, frontline, board members of the organization. And why is that important? I think diversity and equitable diversity is very important in these situations. When you have a group of white men who run and kind of decide what goes on for hockey in Manitoba, they're really not getting the perspectives of females or of the First Nation community, Métis Nation community, Inuit, the Black, the racialized. So there is that lack of representation, and that basically makes more representation. You have better ways of making informed decisions and informed decisions to implement new systems. We've all talked about the barriers. So the other piece is the equity audit. And then finally, it's a tool, it's a disaggregated data collection tool. And that basically is a way that organizations can now start to collect better data in terms of who's accessing their sport, why are they accessing, what does it look like? And then from there, they can maybe see what are the gaps that they're reaching at. So we have that. I think we're very ambitious, and we have maybe some other surprises up our sleeves in terms of ideas that we would like to do. One of the things, like for myself, I think it's important that if there could be a self-reporting mechanism that across the whole province, that a QR code or a phone number, people could go and reach out and say, you know what, I've experienced racism here, or if I'm a witness, I just saw this person say this to this at this hockey game at this time. And then maybe we would have individuals to follow up and to really crack it down, because one of the most heart-wrenching thing that someone can experience is when you come forward and tell your story as a victim and it not to be acknowledged at all. It can make you really disillusioned about the world and in sport, and that impact is so great. So I think if we could have some kind of self-reporting tool, and I think that would be the greatest thing that we could do.
Well, thank you. There is so much going on in this campaign, and it gives me hope, and I'm sure it gives all of you gentlemen here hope too as well, that we're stepping in the right direction. And Gololcha, I just want to say, your campaign has spilled off into other sports, because there are going to be 2 amazing conferences, I guess, and workshops with figure skating Canada and the figure skating community right here in Manitoba. My dear friend Tina Chen sent me information. You can check all of that information out on our Facebook and Instagram page at I Like Hugh. So sports are recognizing this, and slowly but surely there won't be any more Keegan stories to tell. And you know what? Thank you so much, Keegan, for coming forward, because you are our future. I mean, we'll have Don and Gode going out to schools and sharing their story, but they're hoping that young people like you grasp this. And so maybe not next year, but hopefully we won't be having this conversation anymore about racism. And we'll all be on the same level playing field. So I want to thank all of you for coming on the show tonight. It's certainly shone a big light on what's happening in our community. And I know that we're on good hands with the anti-racism in sport campaign. I believe, Gololcha, people can go to the website anti-racisminsport.ca for more information.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay.
Antiracisminsport.ca, and right on the front you can see the conference link and register to attend. So it's free registration. We are working on getting the past recording out onto YouTube, and people can replay the first conference day. But yes, the more the merrier. We would like to get as many people listening to the 3 various speakers we have on next Saturday.
Perfect. Well, once again, thank you all for participating in Healing Hearts. Have a safe and wonderful Wednesday evening, and we'll see you soon. Good
Thank you.
night.